Today we're going to continue reading the Gadget Wars. I'm going to restart the chapter because we only got about a page or two in. So we're going to start with Gadget Grounded. Grade A, medium egg number 2. Kelly picked up another egg, loaded it back into the catapult, and pulled the wire loop back. Ready, aim, fire. Splat. A little closer to the bowl, but this time too far left. Too bad about Mom's philandrodon. Well, she decided a little egg might be good for a plant anyway, like fertilizer. She almost had it. Whoops, she wrote again. Kelly looked at the carton. There were 8 eggs left. She had only planned to use about 2. Neither one had hit the bowl. She just knew that if she tried one more egg, she could do it. Grade A, medium egg number 3. She made a slight adjustment on the catapult, picked up another egg, and pulled back. Ready, aim, fire. Splat. Too bad about the overhead light. It had needed cleaning anyway. She would clean it later. Her mother would thank her. Whoops, she wrote again. Now she determined to hit the bowl the next time. Grade A, medium egg number 4. Ready, aim, fire. Meow. Whoops, the cat. Animal interference, she wrote under the results column. The cat left the kitchen, leaving a trail of eggy paw prints. Kelly looked down at the carton. There were 6 eggs left. She just had to get 1 in the bowl. She began to hurry. Grade A, medium egg number 5. Quickly, she loaded another egg and pulled back. The egg flipped back out of the catapult. Before Kelly could duck, it landed right on the top of her head. Cold, wet egg white dripped down her head. Cold, wet egg whites also dripped down her hair. The yolk slid down her forehead and dropped back onto the floor in front of her. Backfire, she wrote. She didn't even stop to clean it off. Scientists have to deal with discomfort. She was too determined to stop. She got out another egg. Grade A, medium egg, number 6. Ready, aim, fire! Whoops, the microwave. Grade A, medium egg, number 7. Whoops, the spice rack. Grade A, medium egg, number 8. Whoops, the toaster. Grade A, medium egg, number 9. Whoops, the coffee maker. Kelly began to think that she would never get it right. The food fight catapult was no use if she could not hit a target. She looked down at the egg carton. There was only 1 egg left. She only had 1 more chance. She looked hard at the bowl. For a moment, in place of the bowl, she imagined a face. Albert Einstein Jones. With new energy, she took the next egg out of the carton. She never looked away from the bowl. She never stopped imagining the face. Creep, she said to the bowl. She put the bowl up on the wall. She put the egg on the loop and pulled back. She squinted her eyes at the bowl. Ready, aim, fire! Grade A, medium egg, number 10, flew across the kitchen with perfect aim. Kelly held her breath. Splat! The egg hit. Kelly stared at the bowl in disbelief. The egg had landed directly in the center of the bowl. Direct hit! She did it! The food fight catapult was a success. Kelly jumped up and down, twirling her food fight catapult over her head. I did it! She yelled. I did it! As she jumped, her foot hit a puddle of egg white, and down she went onto the kitchen floor. She didn't care. In her excitement, she didn't notice the puddle of egg that she was sitting in. She didn't notice the egg still dripping from her hair. She didn't notice the eggs on the wall, or the plant, the toaster, the light, the window, or the spice rack. And she didn't notice the sound of her mother's keys turning in the lock of the kitchen door. Whoops, testing over. Kelly Francis Sparks. Her mother stood in the doorway, her hands on her hips. For the first time, Kelly looked around the kitchen. Eggs were everywhere. Sticky blobs of egg whites were stuck to the wallpaper. Bits of shell covered the floor. Yellow egg yolk puddles dotted the floor and counter. When she had been shooting the eggs, it didn't seem like so many. It looked like a lot more than 10 eggs now. It was an experiment, Mom, Kelly started. I was testing... Kelly, her mother interrupted. You are officially grounded. Gadget grounded. No more experiments, no more inventions, and no more gadgets in this house. She took the catapult out of Kelly's hands and threw it in the trash can. And in 15 minutes, I expect this kitchen to be spotless. Her mother hurried up the stairs, stepping hard on each step. Kelly watched the top of the trash can swing back and forth. She blinked back the tears. There was nothing sadder to Kelly than the sight of one of her precious gadgets in the trash. No more gadgets? Gadget grounding was the worst possible punishment to Kelly, especially now when she had a problem and needed her gadgets the most. Her mom's words still rang in her ears. Gadget grounded? Then she remembered her mom's exact words. No more experiments, no more inventions, and no more gadgets in this house. In this house? This gadget was not needed in this house. This gadget was needed at the Danville school. Quietly, she opened the trash can lid and took out gadget number 44. Today, testing was over. Tomorrow, it would be needed for real combat. All right, next chapter. Gotcha. The next morning, Kelly loaded up her backpack for school. She put in her homework, her books, a comb, a pack of gum. She paused. She pulled the food fight catapult out of its hiding place in the top of her closet and looked at it. Should she or shouldn't she? It had already caused her a lot of trouble. Well, just because she took it to school didn't mean that she had to use it. She put it in her backpack. She started to zip up the backpack, but paused again and looked around the room. There might be some other things that could come in handy, just in case, you know who, wanted to start something again today. Pretty soon the backpack was bulging and Kelly was on her way. Ring! The last bell was ringing just as Kelly hurried into the classroom. She saw Albert watching her as she sat down. He had a mean grin on his face. As soon as she sat down, she knew something was wrong. Ew, gross. Something was wet on Kelly's seat. Something was wet and squishy and had been on her seat when she sat down. She felt her back of her jeans. Gross! Now the back of her jeans were wet and squishy too. How could it have happened? She felt again. There was something like a flat sponge on her chair, like a flat, wet sponge. She looked over at Albert. He was grinning. She could tell immediately that he had done it. He licked the tip of his finger and made an imaginary mark in the air as if he were keeping score and had just scored a point. Without making a sound, his lips formed the word, "Gotcha." Kelly pulled out the wet sponge thing and dropped it under her desk. She was so mad and tears stung in her eyes. She would not cry. She wanted to raise her hand and tell Miss Haycock, but she didn't. None of the kids in her class had noticed, and she didn't want them to know about her wet pants. How embarrassing. It would be better just to sit quietly and wait for them to dry. She remembered back in kindergarten when Tucker Johnson used to wet his pants in class. He would almost make it to the recess bell when a big puddle would begin to form under his desk. Kelly could remember the big wet spot on the back of Tucker's pants and how the other kids had laughed at him. She didn't want to be laughed at again today. She had to make sure no one saw her pants. She sat back down and prayed that she wouldn't have to go in front of the room. Please, she prayed, please don't let me get called on to go to the board. Please don't let my pencil lead break and have to go up to the pencil sharpener. Please don't let me get picked to pass out papers today. Please. Kelly Sparks. Her prayers had not been answered. Miss Haycock was calling her. Yes, Miss Haycock? Kelly, I said. Would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? We are waiting. The Pledge of Allegiance. How could she go up in front of the class and lead the pledge? Not only would she have to stand in front of the class, but she would have to turn around and face the flag. Her wet bottom would be facing the class. Miss Haycock, how do you say no to your teacher? Kelly, Miss Haycock was frowning. She liked to get the class started on time. We are waiting. Her jeans were cold and clammy and stuck to the back of her legs. The spot on the back of her jeans was darker than the rest of her pants. She could hear a few giggles as she walked slowly up to the front of the room. No one knew about Albert's trick. They probably all thought that she had wet her pants. The giggles increased when she turned around to face the flag. Kelly's face was on fire with embarrassment. With her eyes on the floor, she began, I pledge allegiance to the flag. From the back of the room, you could hear Albert's voice louder than all the others saying the pledge, with liberty and justice for all. Albert Einstein's Jones, she thought, was, as she finished, you will not get away with this. You will get your justice. She did not look up when she finished the Pledge of Allegiance. She did not look up as she walked back to her desk. She did not even look up after she sat down at her desk. She felt like she could never look up again. All through the morning, Through reading and math and social studies, she stayed at her desk and thought of only one thing: revenge. All right, the next chapter is called The Real Gadget Whiz. When it was break time, Kelly did not get up or move from her seat. There was still a big wet spot on the back of her jeans. She was too embarrassed to get up again. All the other kids went into the hall, to the water fountain, or to the bathrooms. Albert left with them. Kelly made her move. Quickly, she slipped over to Albert's desk. She opened it. Wow, she had never seen anything like it. It was full of gadgets. There was a list on top of the gadgets. At the top of the list, it said, War Gadgets by The Real Gadget Whiz. Kelly quickly read the list of war gadgets. Number 1, pant sweater. Number 2, spitball cannon. Number 3, smell gel. And number 4, sticky chalk. The first gadget, pant sweater, had a big check beside it. Of course, it had already been used. There were a lot of gadgets on that list. Life at Danville School was getting dangerous. She closed the desk, but before she went back to her seat, she left a little surprise for him. In place of his pencils, she put 2 of her own special gadget pencils that did not write. Class, sit down for your spelling test, Miss Haycock said. Perfect, thought Kelly. Across the room, she watched Albert get ready for the spelling test. He got out a piece of paper and lined up his pencils at the top of his desk. Kelly smiled. They were not his pencils. He was in for a big surprise. The first word is disaster. Disaster. Miss Haycock always said the words twice. Then she would not repeat them. No questions were allowed during the test. Kelly wished that she had taken time to study the night before. She had been too busy cleaning the kitchen. Disaster, she wrote on the paper besides number 1. Then she erased it and wrote disaster. That looked right. She looked over at Albert. He was desperately trying to make the pencil work. He was writing over and over, pressing the pencil down harder and harder. Disaster was the perfect word for Albert's spelling test. Kelly grinned. Albert stopped writing and looked at the pencil. The next word is impossible. Impossible, Miss Haycock said. Kelly grinned again. Another perfect word. Albert picked up the next pencil and tried to write with it. He stopped writing and looked at his paper. His face was red. A little trickle of sweat dripped down the side of his face. He raised his hand and waved it in the air. Now, Albert, said Miss Haycock, we have a rule about questions during a spelling test. No questions allowed. Just do your best. The next word is... Kelly didn't hear the next word. She looked over and realized that Albert was staring directly at her. She looked back at him. She licked her finger, lifted it in the air, and gave herself an imaginary point. Gotcha, her lips said. Albert's mouth fell open. He picked up both pencils and looked at them closely. He looked back at Kelly. He hit the desk with his fist. Then he put the pencils down and put his head on the desk. He had given up on the spelling test. It didn't feel as good as Kelly thought it would. In fact, she felt bad for Albert. He was going to fail his first spelling test at Danville School. She looked back at her paper and began to think about how she could get a pencil to Albert. She should try to pass one to him. Should she apologize? Just as she was beginning to feel like helping Albert, something wet and disgusting hit her in the side of the face. She suddenly remembered what was the next gadget on Albert's list: spitball cannon. A big wet blob of spitball fell down from her face onto her spelling test. Now she didn't feel bad one bit. Now she felt mad. When the spelling test was over, instead of apologizing, she started her own list of Gadget Wars. Gadgets. At the top of the list, she put a fake pencil and put a big check beside it. Of course, she had already used it. Then she smiled, a sly kind of smile, as she went on to finish the list. The Gadget War had begun. All right, and we will stop there and pick up next time.